Hello, friends. Welcome to my podcast, Conversations Between Terry Lynn and New Authors. On this episode, I'm talking with Kevin Creighton, who writes novels for adults. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you for having me here.
Please tell us about your writing and your first book.
Well, I've had the idea for writing a novel for about 5 years. I started off in one area and said, okay, I want this to be my hero and I want it set in this location. And then that changed and it changed again. And it finally settled down. I realized, you know what, write what you know. And I live in Southwest Florida and I am a firearms writer and a firearms instructor. I'm also a bit of a history nerd. So I know all of those things. And I decided, you know what? Let's write about that. I'm a huge fan of authors like Robert B. Parker and John D. MacDonald and Elmore Leonard and all these people who write classic American detective fiction. But I'm also a person of faith. And at some point in many of those books, the hero goes down, they write the hero into some of the more lurid areas of life. And I said, you know what? That's just not for me. I love the writing. I love the characters, the environments that they create. But this part here kind of leaves me cold. I decided to write a book that I would enjoy reading, which is what I did. So my first novel is called Salvation. It was published in November of this year. It's got some good reactions, some great reviews. Everybody who's read it has loved it. And it's set in Southwest Florida, where I live. And it covers a lot of topics of today and relevant today, and I think in a very even-handed way.
That's awesome. Your love of classic tough guy fiction really comes through, and Salvation sounds like a gripping, gritty story that honors that tradition while making it your own.
I like to think so, yes. It really, it's just so, they're so refreshing to me. I love reading snappy dialogue. I love watching snappy dialogue. Watch a lot of shows like, Landman and West Wing and Yellowstone and other ones out there that just have, writing that just pops. One of my favorites was Longmire, was Timothy Oliphant and Walt Goggins, just this great snappy dialogue. And I think that's missing from a lot of books these days.
What challenges have you faced as a new author, especially when it comes to publishing or marketing your book?
I was really I'm not invisible online, but I am kind of known in my circles. I have decent followings on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and I'm connected with a lot of people with whom I would believed would be interested in this book. So I mentioned, hey, I've got a new novel out, and people who have been very good to me in the past in publishing other articles that I've written just wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't do anything about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, gosh, thanks. I promoted your stuff, and now when it comes time for you to promote my stuff, I get crickets. That being said, people who I wouldn't expect to be my champions have been my champions. So it's kind of like, throw everything up against the wall, see what sticks.
That's such an honest realization and a tough one. It really shows how publishing teaches us quickly that support doesn't always come from where we expect, even after years of building connections.
Yeah, that was very true in my case. Some friends really stepped up, but I didn't really write this book with the idea that it would become an international bestseller. I wrote it because I thought it was an interesting story. I thought it was, I had character that I really liked. I had a villain that I absolutely just really liked. He's a good bad guy. And I wanted to write something that, expressed my life here. So it wasn't necessarily, let me write the next bestseller, but I hope it is. I mean, come on, who doesn't? But it's been a good journey for me. It's been a good side project. And I think it'll, hopefully turn into more than a side project.
What was your favorite book as a child, and do you think it influenced your writing style today?
That's interesting. As a child, what was my favorite book? I tell you what I loved was the Encyclopedia Brown books. The ones from the youth of the smart kid in class, because I was a smart kid in class. I was 5'1", 120 pounds in sixth grade. So I got beat up every hour on the hour. I loved those books and I still like them. I also read a lot of science fiction. I've read basically everything that Isaac Asimov has made. I've read most of Robert A. Heinlein's books. Um, I've read a lot of Arthur C. Clarke. So there's your big three right there. Um, and then in high school, I was introduced to the writings of Ian Fleming, James Bond author. And he has his ups and downs as a writer, But when he's good, he's very, very good. He's a great writer when he's on. There are some parts that aren't so good, but that desire for the finer things in life, but to accept no substitutes, I think really struck a nerve with me.
Your long writing journey and influences clearly shaped a strong voice that stands on its own.
I like to think so.
Is there a scene or character in your book that's especially meaningful to you?
I'm not going to say that the hero's girlfriend is based on my wife, but the hero's girlfriend is totally based on my wife. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of sort of a very important character to me. And one thing I wanted to do with this book is I wanted to be careful that I didn't, there's a phrase out there called fridging the feminine lead, where she is treated as nothing more than an object of a quest, and she's not allowed to be strong and independent on her own. And I really wanted to avoid doing that because I married a strong and independent woman. And so I actually gave her a scene in the climax where she takes charge of her own life in a very significant way. And I showed it to my wife, and she was really impressed with the writing there. So, right off the bat, if I wrote, my something based on my wife and my wife liked the reaction, that's a win for me.
That's really touching. Basing Sandra on your wife gives the story a heartfelt core, and it's wonderful to see such a meaningful real life bond reflected in your work.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's also a problem with a lot of people in this genre. I mean, Robert B. Parker doesn't do it, but other writers do it where the hero jumps in between women, changes women more often than buy new sets of pants. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not my beliefs. I've been married to the same woman now for 28 years. We're going on 30 years knowing each other. So that's what I write. I could not write somebody who jumps from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend because that's just not who I am.
What age group do you write for, and what draws you to that specific audience?
I write I mean, I would say if you can read any modern detective or military, basically, I was introduced to James Bond in high school. Um, you know, um, Anybody who would read like a Tom Clancy novel or a Robert Ludlum novel, or anything like that would be, right at home with this book. What draws me to that, and this is something I'm going to really pick up in the second book, is we don't have archetypes for the American male these days right now. We don't have that classic hero that we had in the past. There's a quote from C.S. Lewis about the importance of teaching children about dragons is not that they be scared of dragons, but because that they can learn that dragons can be overcome. And I went, oh, I like that. We need to teach I write for guys, women will probably love the book as well, but I have men in mind when I write this book. We need to help them understand, to recapture the meaning of honor. And honor is not an excuse for bad behavior. Honor is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And that's kind of sort of been my passion for the past, oh gosh, 10, 15 years, raising my two boys. Same thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Writing for an adult audience lets you stay true to the genre you love while keeping your own values intact, and that authenticity really shows in the story.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Are there any books or authors that inspired your writing style or love for storytelling?
Oh man, so many. So many. I mean, I'm a voracious reader. You can't be a writer and not read. That's like being a chef and not eating. You have to, so many. I mean, probably first and foremost is Robert B. Parker. I've literally read everything he's written. I don't like the people. I'm not as big of a fan of the people who've picked up the series after his passing, but his original books are just tremendous. John D. MacDonald. I mean, when Kurt Vonnegut says that, you're a good writer, you're a good writer. Elmore Leonard will be another one. Ian Fleming, I mentioned before. Robert A. Heinlein, definitely a lot of his stuff. Tom Clancy, absolutely. Stephen Kuntz, the guy Tom Clancy wrote. Oh gosh, I'm looking at his, can't read the title because it's too far away. But the guy he co-authored Red Storm Rising with, a lot of that, adventure. Oh, Robert Louis Stevenson, quite a lot of Robert Louis Stevenson, and George MacDonald Fraser, the Flashman series were fantastic. I loved the Flashman series. It's so much fun to read. A lot of people like that. Tolkien, absolutely Tolkien. The mythic storytelling that he had was just breathtaking at times. He's such a good writer.
That's a really thoughtful approach. Writing a story that honestly reflects who you are without forcing a label allows readers of all backgrounds to connect with it in an authentic way.
I don't want to be locked into a box here, into writing, okay, well, you've got to write faith-based literature because that's your background. Like, no, no, I have to write good literature. If, my faith pops up in that, great, but I'm not going to alter the vision I have and my way of seeing the world, which I believe is correct for me, in order to say, well, you need to fit in my box. I'm like, no, no, I don't. And that's the beautiful thing about self-publishing right now is that I can do that. You know, um, in the music world, and for so long, there were gatekeepers. There were the record labels. If you got a record label, the record label guided your how your music sounded. They would have, an A&R man say, okay, that's the single on that album. That's the one you want to put out. But these days, anybody can do that. Anybody can create a YouTube channel or a SoundCloud and create their own music and put it out there. You and I both are both the type of people who, create our vision and then put it out there for the world. And there isn't that intermediate that we had before there. There was a great, I've been online since 1994. It used to be that the web page that I created for my trip to Ecuador, that was the number 7 result on the web for the word Ecuador. Okay, so and that's how long I've been doing this. So I've watched how it's changed society, and one of the biggest ways it's changed society. There was a phrase from a Arizona State journalism professor I heard. That's it. That's exactly it. The deer now have guns. Where journalism used to be feeding the deer, and the deer would follow. That CBS, ABC, to New York Times, blah 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 blah. They would set the message, and then everything would follow. Now, with things like podcasting and YouTube and Twitter and blah, 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 people's voices can be heard and amplified and magnified. People who couldn't necessarily even join the conversation because their physical limitations are where they are. Now they can be heard. And that is so freaking cool, you know? So that's it's fun. It's given me a voice and I love it.
Do you have any advice for other aspiring authors who are just starting out, especially in children's literature?
My advice for people starting out in children's books, in adult books, in anything would be the same. Write. Get on the keyboard and start banging away. I started blogging in 2003, and for the first 3 years, I got literally one comment on my blog. That was it. Okay, but you know what I learned to do? I learned how to write, and that turned into a very popular blog where we got links from some of the biggest sites on the website. That then turned into a 6-year gig for me being a full-time writer. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm not a full-time writer right now. I'm actually an English teacher right now. But who knows, if the next book does well or this book takes off, bam, back to being a full-time writer again. I would love doing it. I would love being an English teacher. The future is kind of up in the air right now for me, and that doesn't bother me in the least.
What do you think makes a children's book truly memorable?
That's an interesting question. I would say first off, good characters, people you can relate to. We talked about favorite authors. I actually missed my favorite author. It's Shakespeare. You read Shakespeare's characters and you read Macbeth and you go, oh, I totally get this guy. You read Romeo and Juliet going, oh yeah, been there, done that. Well, without the, violence and the murder, but he writes these scenes and these situations that are so universal because of the people involved in them. And plus his writing just zings once more into the breach once more. Henry V and the failings of Falstaff and all that stuff is just beautiful. So it's the characters. It's looking at that person going, oh, I get it. I see myself in him. A perfect example of that is Tommy Lee Jones' character right now in Landman. My goodness, what a performance he's putting on. It's just wonderful to watch. Wait, did I see Tommy Lee Jones?
If a child came up to you and said, I want to write a book too, what would you say to encourage them?
I would say start a journal right off the bat. Write down your thoughts every day. Get into use in the habit of writing. It's a habit. You're not going to write well unless you make it a habit. You have to. I remember a blogger I heard a while back say that blogging is intellectual prototyping, and I love that description. I used it. My favorite sport is baseball. So how I describe it is it's like you're standing at the plate and it's a 3-and-2 count. What do? You swing at every pitch. Because yes, you may strike out, but you're going to be staying at that plate for a long time. And you're going to be fouling off pitches and sending them into the stands and maybe not getting that correct hit, but you're taking a swing. And if you take a swing, you've got a chance of getting a hit. Write 300 words a day. It could be 300 words about how much you can't write 300 words a day. Okay, one of my favorite musicians is David Bowie, and a song from off of one of the Berlin albums, Sound and Vision, the lead single, one of my favorite songs of his, is literally a song about his writer's block. But it's such a fantastic song. You don't notice it until you listen to the lyrics going, wait, the lyrics are, I will sit right down waiting for the gift of sound and vision. Okay, so you're writing about your writer's block and it sounds fantastic. Way to go. Just, foul off the pitches. Do the work every single day.
That's interesting about David Bowie's song Sound and Vision, that it's about his writing block. What exciting projects or books are you working on next?
Yeah, I should probably say what Absolution is here right now. Absolution is the second book in the series that I just literally started on, like this week. Got about 1,000 words into it. I can't write a book about trivial things, I think. I'm just, I love one of my favorite books is Gatsby. I think the writing in Gatsby just pops. But when you get right down to it, it's a book about a traffic accident. That's it. Now, is it great writing? Oh, yes, absolutely. One of the lines in there is one of my, do you live too long having a single dream? That's one of the best lines ever written. Okay. But Absolution is going to be about something that's really important right now, which is human trafficking. Especially the way that, we are treating women overseas right now. Some cultures are. It's horrific. It's just like, wait a minute. We used to invade other countries and bomb them because they were doing stuff like that to women. What's wrong with us? Why are we allowing this? And that's kind of, that's where I want to see. I don't know where it's going to end up. When I write a book, I start off with my characters and I start off with a general outline, and then I let the characters dictate where everything is going to go. They have a tendency not to obey my commands, and I hate that, but it turns out pretty good.
Where can people find you online, follow your journey?
They can find me online at kevincreighton.com. On Facebook, I'm under Kevin Creighton. I have two pages, a personal page and an author page. Follow them both. That'd be cool. I'm on Twitter as xkev. And the book is available right now on Amazon.com in paperback and ebook form. I am working on getting an audiobook version as well.
Thank you, Kevin, for your information. I will put the link to your website and social media handles in this episode's notes below.
Well, thank you for.
Is it anything else you want people to know about you?
One of the things, for new authors, there's a big discussion in a lot of the Facebook groups right now about AI and saying, well, should we use AI to do this or that and the other thing? Um, it works. It can work. But like I say, I was a commercial photographer for 12 years. When I was a photographer, learning to be a photographer, I got a phone call one day from a person who owned a hearing aid shop. And the local community, the local mayor was proclaiming that next tomorrow to be National Hearing Loss Awareness Day or something like that. And she wanted a photographer to take pictures of her with the mayor, that sort of thing. So she called the local college where I was working and said, hey, can you send over a photographer? Does one of your students want to be a photographer? And I took the phone call. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I got experience working with a client before I graduated college. I learned how to work with a client while I was still, learning my craft. That is an alternative to AI, I think, that most people aren't really taking advantage of. You know how many students out there, graphic design students, would love to have a book cover in their portfolio, an actual printed book cover in their portfolio that they could show to somebody trying to get a job when they come out of college? That would be awesome. How many drama students would love to have a dramatic reading of a book in their background when they're trying to get jobs? That's a leg up. Anything you can do in college to get a leg up on your competition, go for it. And it's going to be a lot. It's going to turn out so much better than AI. I mean, it is. I'm AI isn't smarter than anybody. AI cannot be creative. It can take from other people's creativity, but it cannot be creative in itself. You've got me talking about my favorite thing, which is me.
I know, right? Without AI, this podcast would not be possible. AI gives people who are nonverbal like me a lot of opportunities, too. Thank you, Kevin, for talking with me on my podcast, Conversations Between Terry Lynn and New Authors on the Rise.
Thank you for having me. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. You are welcome, Kevin. Okay, my listeners, tune in next week when I talk with Valentine Harris and find out how his childhood favorites books inspired him to create his own stories and worlds. Until then, happy reading with your kiddos.